One world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of election, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. So I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition. It is October 8th, 2013. Joining me to dissect another 2 hours of insanity here in Bizarro World tonight is my good friend, Mr. Steve Stars. And you all know who he is by now. Steve's been on the show multiple times here already on Truth Frequency and before on the other networks I was on. And he's a DTRH regular. He is part of what I would call the DTRH/Federal Jack family. He is a good friend of mine, and I respect his opinion. And it's time to get into the nitty-gritty. Steve, welcome back.
Hey, my pleasure, Popeye. And, thanks for continuing to do the great work that you're doing with federaljack.com, your archives, your videos. You just assembled a library of some of the finest people that, will be in archives for many years. And people can just go to Down the Rabbit Hole or federaljack.com and look at the list of videos, YouTube's, podcasts, and of course, there'll be way too much of me. I'm just kidding. I'm glad to be on the show, but you've had such great guests, people like Judith Ferry Baker, Fritz Springmeier. So many others that I listen to. I just can't even keep up with your shows. I'm still digging through them on YouTube, but it's good to be back on your show. So much news tonight, and I don't know. There's so many places we could begin, friends, but I think we're right on the cusp of some very interesting times. If I could say that about them. They are interesting. This next week, here we are in October. Today's I guess it's the 8th, isn't it? 2013, and we're looking at this truckers' strike, that's truckers' rally that's going into Washington. I believe there's going to be also a veterans march there. While they've closed down all these veteran sites and things like that, they're barricading surrounding sites and places like the Iwo Jima Monument in Washington, D.C., and we heard about the New York Police Department shutting down the 9/11 memorial there and various other things. And some of these are on private property. It's just absolutely incredible with this government shutdown. But, that's a place to begin. We can go from there wherever you want to go. And I'm just glad to be back on the show. Thanks, Popeye.
Well, there's just so much to get into. First and foremost, by the way, I want to mention really quick, I will... I put a post on Facebook the other day addressing the fact that I did a little... side investigation this weekend. As many people know, I also investigate, and I've done stories about this and broadcast about it, about the paranormal. And I got a chance to go to a real haunted estate again this past weekend, and I spent probably about 5 6 hours overnight in the middle of the night exploring the property. And I've already been there once before, so I didn't have to waste too much time just going to places that there might not be anything. I knew exactly where to go from previous experiences. And we had some interesting experiences. A lot of stuff we actually were able to verify because we had a historian with us, plus a couple members of a paranormal investigative agency. So, a lot of people, this screws with their religious beliefs, and every time I talk about this stuff, I have a lot of people who are like, "Oh my God, Popeye, be careful! You can get sucked into evil spirits and stuff that way." I just want the listeners to understand something. When it comes to this stuff, I take it very seriously. I'm not one of these willy-nilly douchebag ghost hunters you see on a reality TV show, okay? I've been researching the paranormal since I was a little boy, okay? Since I was probably about 5 or 6 years old, I've been into this. I know a lot about what I'm doing, and I promise that when I go into this and I do an investigation to this stuff, I don't do it half-assed, and I don't run into things like it's a game. So I don't expose myself. I understand that people who maybe aren't able to protect themselves, are not well versed in things, perhaps would not be able to do so and could be exposed to bad things. And you are correct. Your worry is understandable, but please understand that I do take this just as serious as I do investigating anything else. So I wouldn't go into it half-assed. I don't think that I would use Ouija boards or anything like that, because that stuff is really bad. I've played with that kind of stuff when I was younger, and I've had really horrific experiences. In fact, it was a small group of people that were meeting up to go and do this investigation with this paranormal research group, and a couple of them were younger kids, and they had wanted to use a Ouija board, and everybody in the group told them no. And what was interesting, my group, there was only about 8 or 9 people in total, but they broke us up into two groups. And my group was my wife and I and 2 police officers who did this in their spare time, as a side thing. And these guys are, total cops, like what you would think of a cop. They are cops. I sat and picked their brains while we were, working and walking around doing the investigation, and they totally believe in this stuff because they've seen stuff. So, and they were there with us when things happen. So, it just goes to show you it's interesting how it brings together, investigating this kind of thing. It brings together all different walks of life. And I didn't miss the chance to take a sideways shot at the profession. I did say to them, "Wow, you guys are pretty open-minded for cops. Usually cops are, very close-minded and are trained to not think outside the box." I said, "Kudos for you for being the exception to the rule." And they just looked at me. So at least I got a chance to throw a little, you know what I mean? But I will release the audio and stuff. I have like 3 hours of different, we placed audio recorders all over, and then we went and we did EVP sessions and things in certain areas and other stuff, and we just recorded while we were walking through the house. So I have to go through everything and see if there's anything there, although there is picture evidence that did show some interesting things that we have to look into further. But I'm not going to, some of it could be easily, there are times that things might look paranormal, but they're easily explained away, like dust floating in the air or whatever. So you have to go and you have to, really, in order to not look like an a-hole when talking about this stuff, you have to be able to, discern what's real and what's not. So I'm not just going to run out there with the information. I have to go and look through everything first, and I haven't had a chance to because, again, we're a one-man crew. So I will, maybe in the next week or so, be able to sit down. I hope to try to get it all done before Halloween for everybody, as like a paranormal-themed broadcast, at least one of them, anyway. And I'm trying to get the guy who founded the research society that took us on the tour of the estate property. I'm trying to get him on. I talked to him the night we did it, and I'm going to get either him or a representative of the group to come on and talk about some of the other stuff that they've investigated and just the paranormal in general. So there will be that I'm going to save all that for a specific paranormal broadcast. You know what I mean? That way I can put it all together and it'll all be under that heading, so it's much easier for people to find instead of looking in the archives and there being 18 different broadcasts and there's a snippet of it here and a snippet of it there. But people did ask me about it. I posted on Facebook and I got a ton of messages and emails and comments or private messages on Facebook about it. So I will eventually I have to go through all the video, because like I said, we have like hours and hours of video, a couple hundred photos to go through, because we had like 3 or 4 cameras there that I had access to the video and pictures from. So it's going to take me a little bit to go through that, plus all the audio. But when I get the audio and stuff, I will, if I find anything, because I don't know if we caught anything on audio or not. I can't say we did because I haven't gotten a chance to go through it. If we find anything, I'll let you know, meaning the audience. But I am going to get somebody from the Research Society on to talk about the place that we went through and some of the other stuff that they've been through. So needless to say, it is interesting, to say the least. And by the way, so people understand why I would even bother talking about it, because a lot of people would go, really? Why would you even bother researching that stuff, Popeye? That stuff doesn't exist. Well, it does exist. There are things that you don't know about and that we don't fully understand. And I have to tell you, honestly, the paranormal and aliens and stuff like that are what led me to conspiracies when I was a kid. The first conspiracy I was exposed to in a book about the paranormal was they had a little chapter on conspiracies, and in there was a little blurb about the Kennedy assassination. And when I read this blurb, I was like, get out of here. Really? So I went and I started researching it, and I was like, wow, they really killed this guy. And then it got me into it, and I started, look where I am today. Look at all the people I've interviewed. So perhaps I wouldn't have been set on that path of researching the Kennedy assassination the way I did, and it has a kind of a special place for me because it was the first conspiracy I ever researched, because it was in a book my mother got me from Time Life about the paranormal and weird things. And it was, there was this tiny little chapter about conspiracies, and it was a page about the Kennedy assassination, and the other side of the page was about the Lincoln assassination. And look, you know what I mean? And look where I am today. So, yes, the paranormal led me into researching and looking at the government I already didn't trust them, but it always made me think out. When I was a kid, I was already thinking outside the box, basically. So, I can't bash it. I know there is stuff that I don't know and I don't understand. And I'd rather look into it, honestly, and talk about it than feel like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my listeners. Like, I don't do this for commercials. I don't do this for money. So I don't care. If you get mad at me and you tune out because I do about a broadcast about the paranormal, oh well, at least I'm willing to talk about anything and be open-minded. So, it doesn't mean that I don't believe that there's a creator or anything like that. It just means that I do believe that there's stuff that we have no idea about. I think one of the pretenses we have to drop as humanity, Steve, is this idea that we know everything. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because we approach a lot of stuff like space, the oceans, everything, history. Look at how people react when you try to tell them something about conspiracies or history, and you tell them all the history as you know has been you've been lied to or been rewritten from what it really was. They don't want to. No. If that was true, I would know about it because we're the smartest that humanity's ever been, and blah 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 blah. So we have this ego about us that they're and that stems into everything, whether it's government conspiracies, aliens. How many people have you ever had a conversation with? And when I say aliens, I use that term loosely, by the way, because I don't know what they would look like. So I'm not trying to say, oh, they're little grays, or they're reptilians, or they're this, or I don't know what the hell they are. Okay, but to think that we're the only life force in the universe, you know what I mean? And you try to explain that myopic view to somebody, and they're like, no, that's heresy. There's no such thing as aliens. I'm like, dude, there would have to be. Look at the universe and then the different dimensions that science even now admits. You have the multiverse, right? All these different universes and all these different dimensional timelines or whatever. Holy quantum physics, Batman. So does all that not exist? Is that all just oogity boogity made up, by the devil, or is there really something there to it? People need to stop looking past or getting stopped by their egos, and religion has a way of screwing with people's mind too. All of them, not just one, all of them, because it makes people stop at a certain degree, because then people go, well, then there can't be a creator. Well, who? How do you know that? In fact, if you study quantum physics, you'd have to understand that there would have to be some creative force to make all this stuff work the way it works. I mean, it couldn't have happened by chance. It just doesn't, you know what I mean? It couldn't have just, oops, oh, look, it was an accident, and oh my God, all this magnificent stuff that happens, and it just, I'm sorry, it doesn't happen by chance, okay? So obviously, yes, there is some sort of creative force. So I just think that people, when researching this stuff, and I got sidetracked on this for a reason, I think that they end up, we have this myopic view that as humanity, and again, it extends to every aspect in our life, like, we know everything there is to know. Like, I would, if it was important, I would know. The news would tell me, or it would be on my iPhone. You know what I mean? We're just so disconnected, man, that what we think and the reality of where we really are two different things. Do you understand what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right to look at it that way because, I mean, it's been said before, and I will reiterate that even if we don't believe in a supernatural connection to all this power and authority and what the New World Order is trying to do, they do. They're very, very much involved in their religion. I am not like I would call a David Icke disciple, but every time I've listened to him, things that he talks about resonate and connect with things that I believe as well. I mean, we're not necessarily on the same wavelength. It's pardon the pun, but but I listened to him and I said, yeah, there are definitely these kinds of very evil forces out there that are abusing human beings for certain reasons, and if you want to call them devils or demons or just evil aliens, and there may be good ones as well who are very helpful that he may point out. And I don't know about the different spectrums or the different levels, Popeye, but some of what he talks about is very real. Jordan Maxwell as well. So I have my own set of beliefs, of course, but I'm very open to people talking about the supernatural. I'm very much a believer in the supernatural. And I do believe that it does intersect with our political spectrum, our government, our economy, our mindset. And I find often the people who are not paying attention are basically imprisoned by their senses. In other words, they're the kind of people who just sit and listen to mainstream news media and follow a track and have no dimensional recognition outside of what they're hearing or being able to question or think or look outside the box, as you said, Popeye.
Well, I think that the truth, like, I think science, when you talk to hardcore scientists and stuff, they'll tell you that, some of them, they'll be like, no, there is no God or whatever, it's all science, there's an explanation. Then you talk to hardcore religious people and they have, it's all God, 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 you know what I mean? I think the answer is a merging of both. Science is really just the study of understanding things, right? And trying to figure out how stuff works. Yeah, everything exactly. Works, whether it's nature or the body and stuff. And I think that kind of coincides with religion because people get into religion because they're trying to find an answer to questions. You know what I mean? And most of these questions all stem to the main one: why am I here?
Yeah.
Why are we here? Right? Like, what is our purpose? What the hell? The fact that you even I think people get sidetracked with that question because if you think about it, like, why am I here? If you're thinking that deep, you can already answer the question with, you're here because you think that deep.
Right.
Think about it I don't know if that makes any sense. That might lose people because we're getting like too...
Well,
too deep, but
I think you're right on though, because there, in my opinion, was a world prior to the world that we see today that was here. We see the temple ruins in places like Baalbek in Lebanon. We have found all kinds of monumental sites underneath the waters and off the coast of Japan and places in South America. My opinion, and of course this is just mine, hopefully this will bridge the gap between some people who are biblical believers and some people who want to see something maybe a little even deeper. I don't think the Garden of Eden was an old event. I think it was rather recent in human history, and I think that there was a world before that. If you look at the first chapter of Genesis and compare it to the second, it says God created the world in 6 days and then rested on the seventh, and then he formed man. Then he planted the garden. Then he reformed the animals again, and finally Eve. That's completely out of context with what the first chapter is all about. And so my guess is that might have been a biosphere of some kinds, a project that started maybe 6,000 years ago, and there was a world here a long, long, long time before that, Popeye. So a lot of people really have a problem with that because whenever they think of the Garden of Eden, they think that was the caveman days, and I think it was rather recent history, and I think that's the way it's written in the context. Either Moses was completely schizophrenic and wrote one set of events and then wrote it completely out of context, or he's telling you an ongoing event that happened much later. Now, what was around at that time? How many different kinds of alien life forms could there possibly be that intersected with life on Earth prior to that time that may not be or may still be around, but we don't sense them or see them? They're of a different light frequency, as David Icke says.
You know what the problem with this information is? When the mainstream puts it out, they frame it so that it's either choice A or choice B. Either you believe in aliens or you believe in religion. You can't have you know what I mean? It's always presented with a choice A or choice B. They never try to get you, and people that are hardcore religious get kind of pissed off because they're like, my religion is not based on aliens, that's heresy, blah, 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 you're going to burn. Look, all religions stem back to these ancient cults of people studying and observing the stars, the celestial bodies above. Now, who's to say that all these different religions, by the way, all have these same stories where people came down from above and gave them, whoever, information or, sets of rules or whatever. So I don't discount that there is some spiritual creative energy force, whatever it is. I don't know we'll call it God for lack of a better term. Okay? We'll just say God. Not any God in particular, just God, a God, right? And God, this creative energy, it's not it's not man, it's not female, because that's anthropomorphizing it. That's us putting it in our image. Okay, that's man making this creative force into our image. Again, that's ego, because we're trying to say that, well, of course, we're the top of the food chain, so God must look like us. How do we know that? Like, that's arrogant. I think whatever this creative force is, I think that it's okay to believe in aliens and still believe in this because, hey, something had to create them too, right? If they're living creatures and they're like us, if they have souls and stuff, then, well, their soul, their essence had to come from somewhere too, okay? So I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility to think, you know what I mean? People get like really jammed up when you talk about this stuff. And the reason I bring this up is because, again, it goes back to that thinking, that idea that we are the top of the food chain. That's why I mentioned, like, when you think of gods, no matter through what religion it is throughout history, if you look, we always anthropomorphize them, right? I mean, look at the Greeks. Their gods were all men and women. And they were all ripped, they were all jacked and built. Maybe one or two was fat, but they were all men and women. Yeah. They anthropomorphized their gods. Now, that was and people go, well, that was their religious beliefs and stuff. Well, what about Jesus? What about God as a person? They always say God is the Father, right? Well, you're anthropomorphizing him as a man. What about Islam? Muhammad, anthropomorphized as a man, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. The Jews, everybody thinks back to King David and I forget the other one. What was his name? Joseph or whatever. Again, anthropomorphizing a human into having this godlike ability. So I'm not bashing any one religion in particular. I'm just saying that it's this ego, this base consciousness level that I've talked about before with many different people. They keep us in, well, that level of thinking, like Einstein said, you're never going to solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it. So if we're constantly thinking this base consciousness level, we're never going to get out of it. It's like we can talk about solutions all we want, but if we're running around in the mud, we're still not getting out of the mud pit. Yeah. We should be putting on galoshes and getting out of the mud pit and going on the dry grass and cleaning our boots off and figuring out how we're going to deal with the messy, muddy pit in the middle of our nice field that we wanted to farm and grow non-GMO food. You know what I mean? I mean, we have to step up outside of the box. And I think having that idea, on just understanding that basic premise of being a little bit more open-minded, it would introduce people to more information. I mean, even myself, like, I speak from experience, there were times that I was very narrow-minded. And I'd be, no. And I would find myself taking a defensive position for someone else's stance on something, which is what you see people doing all the time. No, the president's right, or this person's right, or blah, blah, blah. And they don't even know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? Yep. So, and that's being able to be programmed and controlled like that. again, comes from keeping us in this level of base consciousness. So I know I got sidetracked for a few minutes there, but I wanted to touch on the fact that I will bring up the paranormal stuff. But I got into that base consciousness rant, I guess you could call it, because that's how they control us. And all the rest of the stuff that Steve and I get into tonight, you'll be able to see, if you look at it from that level, that they keep everybody in that level of base consciousness. You'll understand better. I mean, how do you think they get the cop to do what they do, right?
Yeah. It's an amazing programming technique that they use in this. It's a little bit like they have people running around a track and there's a guy blowing a whistle and they're all exhausted and they don't know why they're doing it, but yet they follow through with this programming and never really look outside and realize that, they're being conditioned to think and react the way they are without seeing, as we said before, outside the box. And I agree with you. I mean, there's an intersection, I believe, between E equals MC squared in the first 3 verses of Genesis. In the beginning, the earth, God created the heavens and the earth. There was the plan. There was nothing there, but the earth was void without form. And God said, "Let there be light." Light was the first thing created, and light generated the mass. E equals MC squared. It's right there. I mean, the whole thing was fabricated from light and darkness, just as we have positive and negative. And look at your atoms. Look at your electrical circuits. Look at everything. The exchange between energy, the exchange between light and darkness, and solid matter and space. That's my just a little opinion there. If you want to intersect that with something else,
no, actually, I agree, and I agree with your opinion, and I'm gonna cut us off though because I can hear the break music sneaking up on us. Cool. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. 3 minutes. I know, Steve and I just jumped right into the deep end.
Yeah, we did.
We'll be right back. Stay tuned. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. So, now that Steve and I jumped into the deep end of the conspiracy pool, I want to get into a few other things. And I promise I'll have deeper conversations and broadcasts about dimensional travel and interdimensional travel and all this other stuff. Especially, it's funny, talking to Joe Joseph off the air, he recently got into quantum physics, and I'm a quantum physics nerd. Like, I don't understand a lot of the math. Like, I couldn't lay out a formula for you if you asked me to, but I can understand exactly, I don't know why, but I can clearly understand exactly what they're talking about. And not only can I understand it, but I can come up with my own theories without writing it out in that little formula that they do. Only understanding what I know with my limited, narrow scope of quantum physics. But Joe recently found it, and he's like, wow, this stuff it's amazing. I'm like, yeah, now, if this is all a reality, I guarantee you the powers that shouldn't be know this. And you can only imagine that they would want to use this stuff for weapons.
Right.
And a lot of this stuff has to deal with, like mind control technology or the scalar technology, like picture HARP, but like if HARP was if HARP was like a Model A Ford, compared to what, like if you took a 2013 Ford pickup truck, although Fords, the old stuff probably operates better than newer stuff, it's a shot at Ford. Anyway, it would be like comparing the two. They probably, if they have access to this type of technology, then Lord knows what kind of stuff they have. So, yeah, quantum physics and all that stuff is interesting, and I'm going to be getting into more geeky broadcasts about that. In fact, I'm trying to figure out a way to simplify quantum basic, like just some basics, not the basics, but some basics about quantum theory and stuff, so I can do a broadcast on it so I can help the listeners better understand it. Because just understanding that a little bit better and understanding that, that science is even saying, okay, this is what's going on, you'll realize it pairs up with other research that's not scientific. And then you'll realize, like I said, everything kind of, I think instead of everything being separate, I think everything is more of a piece of the puzzle that lays out a bigger picture. And my goal, obviously, with doing the broadcast is just to help people understand things and introduce them to stuff and hope that it sparks a fire of intrigue. So, so I'm even going to do a show on quantum physics and stuff. I'm just trying to figure out how to do it and make it interesting for people to listen to without them going, because I know stuff can get boring. Trust me, there are times I watch stuff and I'm like, oh, I have toothpicks in my eyes, and I'm like, get to the good stuff. You know, you have to fast forward, or it's really all how you present it, I think. Anyway, I want to get into a few other things here in Bizarro World, or in this dimension of Bizarro World that we all seem to have woken up and found ourselves in one day. I'm still convinced that they switched. You know, and I say this half jokingly, but if anybody's ever seen the show Fringe and how they would, you know, erase timelines and switch timelines and stuff, I feel like one day we all woke up and they switched the timeline. I swear to God, it's so weird, Steve. Like, when I was a kid, it was, I think somehow one day, somewhere between, you know, now and when I was younger, they flicked the switch. And just most people didn't notice it at the time because it was at a time it wasn't so noticeable. But now, you know, the strangeness you see going on every day is crazy. Whether it's the cops just being bullies and beating the crap out of people. We're going to get into that in the second hour. The SWAT team raid map. You like that, huh? From the Cato Institute? You see that?
Yeah, I saw that. It was absolutely astounding how many bad SWAT team ventures they've been out there. I mean, we had one here in Greeley, and I sent you the link to that. And of course, that actually made the news. The lady was suing the ATF and the Greeley police for kicking down the door and terrorizing her.
And mind you, that map's not a map of all the SWAT raids. That's just a map of the ones that were reported that went bad.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second. You know, all those pins on the map. I'll drop it into the chat for the listeners.
Yeah, and give us the website for archives and listeners, too, so they can see this thing.
It's over at the Cato Institute. Just look up cato.org / and then all one word, raid map. So cato.org, or excuse me, / So it's cato.org / RAIDMAP. cato.org / RAIDMAP. And it's just a map of the raids that went wrong. Not all of the paramilitary raids in the United States, just a map of the ones that went wrong. The interesting thing I find about this, and we'll get into this later on when we talk about it, is the number of, and you guys can go look at this now, so later on when Steve and I are talking about it, we'll bring the map up again. But if you look at it, it's interesting how many cops killed other cops on these paramilitary-style raids.
Well,
not people that I mean, there was people defending themselves too that shot and killed police officers, and the people were actually within their rights to be defending themselves. But I'm talking about cops killing other cops, and then what they'll do is they'll blame that cop's death on the person inside, and they'll say, oh well, you know, the fact that we had to raid his house, you know, he's responsible for this officer's death. They'll try to legally pin it on him. You know, well, the officer was killed during the raid on the house, but that's not that person's fault. It's your fault for acting out of fear and acting like a bunch of morons and doing things the way you do. That's why people get killed. And until they change their behavior, more and more people are going to continue to get killed, and more innocent people are going to get killed. And it needs to stop. It's getting out of control, but we'll get into that. I want to pick your brain about two things. First, government shutdown. Right. First of all, the only thing they're shutting down is the parks. They're dicking with the VA. They're making it hurt. They're messing with the Pentagon, paying people who are paying the families of people getting killed in their little wars of aggression and minerals and everything else all throughout the world. Right? They're not going to pay the families. They will eventually, but they're not going to give them death benefits right now. But hey, we have enough money to lob Tomahawk cruise missiles at Syria 3 weeks ago.
Yes, very selective the way the government shutdown is being manipulated. And of course, today the big story was that there was an immigration rally in the Monument area of Washington, D.C., a very large one. And I didn't see anything about it on the news, virtually nothing. An illegal, well, you know, if you want to call it the illegal immigration movement, call it whatever you like, the immigration engulfing of all these people who were here illegally. We could go into that in great detail, and I believe that is actually part of a Jesuit and Marxist plot, and I can prove it. I mean, they have their rallies on May 1st, I know, because I was in one. Not that I was participating, but I was affected by one back a few years ago. That May 1st, of course, you know, is May Day. This liberation theology is something that even the first Pope John Paul I, who only lived 33 days in office, friends, he was very much against this idea, and he was planning to rein in Pedro Arrupe and the Jesuits over what all the havoc that they were creating down in Latin America and South America in the Argentine days back in 1978. And he did not like this liberation theology, which is very similar to the very same thing they use with the Jacobians and the Bolsheviks.
Well, it's real simple. It's real simple to break it down, because, Steve's hitting the nail on the head. But and when you said Jacobian, you're talking. People need to understand that word. Go back and read George Washington's diaries. He talks about the Jacobians, or right. Jacobites, I think is what he calls them. Yeah. This whole thing, to simplify it, if they say they have 20 million illegal immigrants in the country, if it's the Democrats that get this bill passed, right, they'll push them as the savior, because you have to remember. Well, I'm doing air quotes when I say this, minorities, okay, are sold and billed that you have to vote for Democrats because Republicans don't like black people or don't like Latino people. And then only Democrats take care of the Latinos or the black people or whatever other minorities. And that's not true. They don't take care of them. They use them, which is actually even worse, okay, yes. than not taking care of them. They actually they wrap their arm around them and do for photo ops, and at the same time they slide their hand back a foot and produce a knife and then stab that person in the back 15 times. Okay, which that's even more sinister than just ignoring their pleas for help. Period. Anyway, it's all about control. So what they'll do is they get all these people in. They get them to believe that the Democrats freed them. Long story short, now when it comes to vote for gun rights or anything else, well, now you have an extra 20 million or 30 million or 40 million or 50 million or 60 million votes. Okay? And it helps to sway things. And it also helps to destabilize the country and the economy it severely, which that's the goal. See, it's about the long con. Everybody keeps focusing on 5-6 months ahead or a year ahead. They don't understand that the people we're up against are thinking 10 years ahead.
Yeah,
their goals are based in 10, 20, and 30-year increments. And in order to achieve these goals, there are smaller goals that have to be met. It's like playing a video game where you have your master, you have the main goal that your character has to achieve, right? And then from that main goal, you'll have 5 or 6 sub-goals that you have to achieve. Oh, collect 3 coins. Rescue 3 people without being noticed. Sneak up on your enemy and disable them from behind. Whatever the hell it is, right? Well, that's what all these smaller things are in the way, okay, for each presidency. Even if the presidency is a full 8 years, 2 terms, okay? Their goals aren't in 4 years or 8 years. Their goals are in 10, 20, and 30 years. And in order to destabilize the country and push us further towards a one-world economy, you need to take the country's already on one knee, and they need to bring us down to both knees and then cut our throat. And that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's precisely what this whole thing is about. I mean, what you pointed out, Popeye, is that if you go back and look at the history of Mexico, especially in the 1830s, Santa Anna, and his, what he was definitely involved with these kinds of elitists and people like that, and he ruined Mexico. I have, whenever we talk about illegal immigration, of course, there are people from all over the world who are illegal immigrants, as we know, inside the United States, but primarily the focus seems to always be on the Latino groups from Guatemala, Mexico, Honduras, and places like that. And the reality is that the nations there have been pilfered by the Jesuits for the last 100 years. That's why they're in the condition they're in. We just had some friends. I support a group called Zapatos, who puts together packages for kids and people like that who are in the middle of Mexico. And our guys just got back last week, and they go to this area in Chihuahua, which is called the Golden Triangle. Popeye, there's a lot of drug activity. And the director down there, he runs a church and things like that. And he says, look, all these narco types know me, okay? And so everyone else knows me. They leave us alone. So don't go into town. Don't do any. Well, we have, one of our young guys decided he wanted to go into town to a convenience store and get some goodies, some snacks, and some bottled water. And he drives into town and he sees like a truck with maybe as many as 30 guys in there, and some of them have automatic weapons, machine guns even, and they're looking him over. And he walks into the store and says, do you have any bottled water? He speaks Spanish very fluently. And then the clerk just kind of looks at him funny and points over in the direction. He walks back out. And he never told us how he got out of there. But he got back to the camp, and the director said, what in daylights are you doing? You have no idea of how dangerous this situation is. You become what we call, I don't remember the Spanish word, an abductee. very simple in this situation because people do not know you in this area. And, you know, we're in the middle of a war zone here. Well, this is the way it's become. And so what a lot of folks don't understand, and I've worked quite a bit with a lot of Mexican relief organizations. As a matter of fact, one of my best friends, or one of the finest men I have ever known, was a Mexican national who came up and lived with us for a while. He wanted to do mission work and start churches down in Mexico. Popeye. I gave him my car. I knew his family. We were really, really close friends. And he was here the whole time working legally, you know, to make money to go back down. He's done an amazing job. But at the same time, when people say, well, if you don't like what you're seeing here, it's racist. And that's the way they condition people to think that we're supposed to accept this wave of criminals, which we armed with Fast and Furious. We could go into that and all that kind of thing. And which we're supporting with the drug war, as you well know, Popeye, and all of the drug war that's going on down there right now. They have ruined Mexico.
Well, that argument of racism, see, all that stuff that's a strawman argument. And the problem is the American general public and a lot of the politicians themselves they don't understand the concept of logical fallacies or rational debate. So they'll attack that straw man argument and get lost in that side argument, or even if it's a red herring, they'll get lost in that down that path, and they won't understand. They don't understand. They'll bite into because racism. Look, as much as it can be used, as an attack weapon, it could also be used to bait people. See, my mother taught me this when I was a kid. She said, a lot of times when people realize that you're reactionary to a certain thing or that you'll react to something, they keep that on file. And if they need you to react to something because they want to manipulate you or whatever, they'll go and do that. Sometimes it's for bait. It's not so much what you think it's for. So calm your emotions and think with your brain, not your anger.
Right. Yeah.
And you have to look at situations like that. Are they trying to bait people because of their reactions? Why would they want to do that? That's how they manipulate people. They bait people into buying whatever. Just like they use fear to control people, a lot of times they could also use it manipulatively. They want you to jump on something, and then they'll get you to focus on that argument. It's not about being racist. My mother was an immigrant from another country. She was born and raised in Holland until she was in her teenage years, and then she came over here. Whatever it was, the late 50s, I think it was, when she came over here, or early 60s. When she came over. No, I think she was already here when Kennedy was killed. So I think it was the early 50s or like mid to late 50s when she came over here to the country. And she was an immigrant. My grandmother, my aunt, my mother, my grandfather, they all had to take tests. They all had to study. My mother had they already knew how to speak English because of they taught it as a second language in the Dutch school system. But my grandmother didn't really speak it very well. She had a very thick accent. She learned it so fluently that she had a job and ended up being very high up in her position. She didn't have a problem learning the language. She didn't have a problem going through the system the way you're supposed to go through it. So I have a bit of an issue, and it's nothing personal, but I've witnessed it. Like, I've experienced it with my own family that they had to go through the immigration system. And I'm not saying that the immigration system might need to be changed, or there might be some things that could be cleaned up here or there, but I would say most of it is probably redundancy and bureaucracy, and a lot of the stuff that there are problems. It's because they let it get that way, so that there would be a problem to fix, or they put something in motion so that there'd be a problem to fix. Out of their chaos comes their supposed order that they've already had waiting in the wings for so long, right? So I don't have a problem with people coming over here and coming through legally, but the problem is, everybody's like, oh my God, you have no heart. That's playing on emotion. That's not thinking with your logic. The only reason why and let's be honest, most of the people that are in California that call themselves, I'm a liberal and I'm for immigration reform. I want those poor immigrants to be able to come over here. Why? So that they can clean your house and do your laundry? Because that's what most of those people want. They want cheap labor. Why do you think big companies are going out and pushing for immigration reform? Because they want cheap labor. They want to be able to pay a worker half of what they pay an American worker to do the same job. And these people will do it because it's more than what they make where they live. And they're in a better living situation. Okay? People don't understand that. The people, the ones, and I do feel bad for the people that are here and they get used, I feel kind of bad for them because, hey, at the end of the day, the ones that are really getting hurt are them. And the American general public, too. I feel bad for them. I don't feel bad for the politicians. They should get out. Honestly, look, if the roles were reversed, I can't feel bad. Like, I used, when I was in the Coast Guard, I had this conflict, right? Because I would go out and we would pick up people. And if we nailed them out in the water, if they were Cubans, if they made it to land wet-foot, dry-footed, but if we caught you on the water, we had to repatriate you. And there were times that we all talked about it, those guys, as we're leaving, we're sailing away, we're like, they're going to get shot. And there was nothing we could do about it. We couldn't do anything about it. We were bound to do what we had to do, and it kind of sucked. I can't tell you how bad of a conflict it really makes you if you have a heart. Some people didn't care. But there's a lot of people out there, and a lot of coasties will know what I'm talking about. That stuff bothers them because you know that these people you're just sending them back to a crappy place. But you have to think about it in the opposite way. If we were going to go to their country and just try to come in through their borders, we would be arrested and deported and sent back or whatever. You can't just go into Canada and say, I'm going to be a Canadian citizen now. Canada would tell you to get the F out and send you back. They'll send you packing. They don't care. You can't do that in Europe either. So you can't just decide, I'm going to leave and go. I'm going to fly over to Europe, and suddenly I'm a European citizen now. And you're going to have to file certain paperwork, and if you don't meet their criteria, and for whatever reason they find some bureaucratic reason, they can punt you back. And if you're there illegally, they'll throw you out. Most countries have laws like that. Okay, there's reasons they do that because of the way the economics of the country work, blah, 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 blah. There's more to it than just, you hate race, you're racist and you hate brown people and don't want them coming over or anything else. Okay, that's a side argument, it's a straw man to get you into that, and it's also an appeal to emotion. Oh my God, these poor people. Look, I feel bad for these people, but let's be honest, we're making things worse. Our government that wants to leave the border open. The only reason why they want the border open is to make the flow of drugs, easier for them to come across. If we really had the military out there, the CIA wouldn't be able to smuggle as much drugs in as they do with the cartels. I mean, let's be honest. It would slow down their cash flow. That's why that's open.
Yeah, human trafficking as well. And, it's very interesting, as I pointed out earlier, that a lot of the priests in Catholic churches are being told by the bishops that we're not going to be dealing with the abortion issue as much now. We want to push this immigration reform issue. And the Catholics are scratching their heads, and they're going, oh, wait a minute. Immigration reform is maybe something that we are concerned about, but why has this become the agenda? Well, now you have a pope who is a former Jesuit priest from Argentina, and he's talking about, the great equilibrium, the idea that the great nations of the world need to share and everybody needs. I mean, what utter hypocrisy coming from a guy like this. But that's his approach. He recently visited Sisi, if you saw that, after the cargo hold of all these people trying to get out of Somalia wrecked, and some of them made it. And of course, they claim that he takes his name from St. Francis of Assisi, but no, that's Francis Xavier, one of the third Jesuit generals, is who he's really all about, friends. And these lies about trying to make you feel guilty, as we said before, because of everything that's going on, are because people who are fleeing the nations that they have ruined prior to ours, and that they're in the very process of doing the same thing here. And that's the reality of what's happening with this. And even some of the conservative Catholics who have spoken out against this have come under persecution from the hierarchy and the bishops in the Catholic Church. And as I pointed out before, Pope John Paul I was murdered after only 33 days, and I believe it was by the Jesuit spy system, and that was 1978.
You know what my wife said to me about this new pope? Mm-hmm. You know what she said? She goes to me, he's such a nice guy. Look at all the things he does. And I said, yep. I said, by deception shall war will be waged.
Yep, that's right.
And she's like, what? And I'm like, I'm kind of misquoting it, but and she kind of looked at me like I had six heads, and I was like, look, basically, the war by deception, I said, and the Jesuits are the ones that trained everybody in that. I mean, a lot of people love to say, oh, it's Israel. Yeah, well, where do you think Mossad and all them, where do you think everybody learned war by deception? these guys perfected the Jesuits. Okay, go back and look them up. And I'm not talking about your local Jesuit priest or, well, I went to Jesuit high school. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about go back a couple hundred years into the past at the very least. Okay, go look up Ignatius Loyola. The Jesuits, they pretty much they wrote the book on doing war by deception. Okay, if you think the Israelis and Mossad are masters at it, the Jesuits make them look like school children. Okay, that guy is doing that stuff to gain everybody's trust, because all the other popes had a bad face, because the Catholic Church had a bad public reputation. The other popes really didn't care, right? Yeah. And Ratzinger looked evil. I mean, that guy just looked evil.
He looked like a gremlin, and this guy's got a smiling face, as you said, but, remember where he came from. Argentina. Remember Allende, Pinochet, the death squads. Okay. Now, it looks, as you examine this guy's record, that he was sometimes rather conservative, but later on lent his sympathies to the oppressed and the people out there, and he sort of went through his own kind of revolution, and his evolution. But friends, this guy was in a very powerful position while all of that bloody murder was going on in Argentina. And, you need to look back at his past. You got to remember that, as we talked about before, Popeye, the Jesuit rat lines helped 25,000 SS men escape Germany after World War II. That was called Operation Paperclip. That was the Jesuit spy system.
That's what I'm saying. He's trying to put a better face on the Catholic Church, because they have a bad public face. That's why, he said gay marriage isn't a sin or whatever the other day. And look, I don't really care. I don't think it is. I don't really care. I've done plenty of broadcasts about that. But I'm saying that's a far cry from what other popes and the Catholic Church would say, right? So my wife had brought that up, and I don't remember if he said it wasn't a sin or it was okay or whatever the hell it was, or not to bash it or whatever. But I said, see, he's trying to get everybody's guard down. You could see he's trying to lull everybody. Oh, it's okay. Come in. What's that old saying? It comes from said
the spider to the fly.
It comes from the story of the end of the Iliad. The Trojan War. Beware of Greeks bearing gifts. The Trojan horse, because the Greeks gave the Trojans the horse, and all the Achilles and all the other soldiers were hanging out inside of it. And they raided the whole place and blah, 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 right? Well,
that's right.
Beware of Greeks bearing gifts. Beware of the Pope bearing gifts.
You gotta be.
Beware of Romans bearing gifts. Serious. Beware of Jesuits bearing gifts. These guys, to me, it's a way of lulling everybody in. Like you said, oh, come on in, said the spider to the fly. Oh, come on, sit down. Look how nice it is here. Yeah, because they don't show you the kill room downstairs. I'm going to pause this right there, Steve, because the top of the hour is coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. When we get back, hour number 2. Stay tuned. I promise it'll be just as informative as hour number 1. Don't go anywhere. 3 short, quick minutes. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. Joining me for hour number 2 is my good friend, filmmaker, fellow radio show host, and all-around troublemaker, Mr. Steve Stars.
I keep telling people I'm trying to solve the problems here, but it seems like I just keep getting in deeper and deeper.
Well, you're only a troublemaker to the powers that shouldn't be, Steve.
That's it. We all are, it seems like, these days, and we've talked about that, and that's the life we live in. As you said, there's been a time switch of some kind, or, we woke up and it was a police state. Of course, we didn't wake up and all of a sudden see this coming. You and I and so many others of your listeners out there have been saying it for so long, and it's finally starting to dawn on the American public. Is it too late? I wonder, it's what's going to happen here, Popeye? What do you think?
I don't think it's too late. I think people are waking up. I think there's actually more people awake than what people realize, and that's partially due to the powers that shouldn't be realizing this, and they realize that the only way, they're one of their only last attempts to stop this is to stop everybody from, A, realizing how many others out there are like them, They're not alone. They're not a minority and not a little tiny fragment of society, but actually a majority of it. And they want to cut off the lines of communication because, see, societies were much easier to control back in the day. That's why, what's his name? Brzezinski talked about this at the CFR meeting in Canada a couple of years back. And he said, humanity, for the first time in human history, it's easier to kill 1 million people than it is to control 1 million people. And that for the first time, humanity is becoming politically awakened. Because, and that's largely in part to the internet, because people can use Skype, or they can go on websites or do articles or post YouTube videos or do radio shows like this or podcasts or whatever. And they can, we can reach people all around the world. There's people tuned in right now in other parts of not just the country, all over the United States, but literally in other parts of the world that are hearing this live. Right on. Okay? That's the new world order. And I don't even want to say the new world order, because it's a concept, and it's actually it's the concept of a dark new world order. It's a lot of times that even that is anthropomorphized, right? We'll say the powers that shouldn't be don't want that. They don't want you and me talking. I mean, Steve's in Colorado. I'm in Florida. We're separated by miles and miles and miles, and yet it's like him and I are sitting in the studio having a conversation about important topics with all of you who are sitting in your houses listening to us. I mean, how amazing is that? They don't want that. That's the cells of the body communicating with each other. Right now, the body, the country, which is like society, humanity, right? We're sick. And the cells are starting to communicate with each other, and we're starting to fight back. We're the white blood cells, and we're starting to team up and go, hey, wake up, guys. Wake up, get up. Look what's coming. We need to fight back. We need to get the body healthy again. And cells are starting to talk to other white cells, and the body's starting to wake up, and the body's natural defenses are starting to come online, and the powers that shouldn't be, which is like a virus invading you, doesn't want that. No, you can't have that. Then the virus would get eradicated, wouldn't it? So they're trying to take out the internet, which is how people are using, a method of the base, I guess you could say, of multiple forms of communication, not just the internet as Skype, because there's so many different ways that people can connect through the internet, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Skype or YouTube. So that's why they attack it. That's why they keep doing the things that they do. Why do you think they want the legislation that they want? It's about control. It's to control, it's to stop the free flow, because just like in a body, just like in anything, when your cells stop talking to each other and communicating with each other, things go awry, the body starts attacking itself, and eventually you die. Society is the same way, and so is this country, and these scumbags know it, and that's why they do the things they do. And when Steve and I were talking about the Jesuits, I mean, it's not like, see, I think the problem with this whole concept of what's going on is that people want to have they want to know who is responsible. It's like when the media tries to pigeonhole. Piers Morgan did this with Ventura. He had him on about his book about the Kennedy assassination, and he said to Morgan said to Ventura, rather, I said, well, who did it? Can you tell me who did it? Because I can tell you that the government knows. They have a guy who says that they know who did it, and they have evidence to back up their claims. Who did it? Who can you say did it? And Ventura couldn't say it was one individual. And see, if you study someone's argument long enough, you can know how to deconstruct it and tear it apart. And obviously, that's what that's obviously what they knew when Jesse came on. That's obviously was the talking point that was given to Piers by one of his producers to try to make Jesse look bad to the people that don't understand what Ventura was saying. Okay, and Jesse was honest, because he's like, you really can't point to one individual, which is the truth. But people naturally want to have one individual to be mad at. That's what the office of the presidency has become. If people don't realize it, it used to be different, but now the office of the presidency has become that focal point. That's why he's such a rock star. Because later on, if things go south or whatever, they can blame him. And when people are pissed off, they can blame him, and they'll have a new puppet in line. Look at how he's, Obama's great and Bush is a scumbag, right? But when Bush was in office, it was Bush is great and Clinton was a scumbag. But when Clinton was in office, it was Clinton was great and Bush Sr. was a scumbag. You see my point?
Yeah, the Strawman. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. They're the physical embodiment of a Strawman argument, because people attack them and never look beyond. They never go and it's not just one person that runs things. It's not just one group. It's not, oh, the Jews did it, or oh, the Jesuits did it, or you know what I mean? First of all, a lot of those arguments and like the first one I mentioned, oh, the Jews did it. A lot of that stuff is done to muddy the waters about real argumentation about politics and stuff of Israel and their foreign policy and things like that. And that's done to muddy the waters so people don't want to talk about it. Another way of making straw man arguments and logical fallacies. See, once you understand all this basic stuff, just basics, you don't even have to go to college for any of this. Spend an hour studying this stuff online. Rational debate, logical fallacy, you'll start to look at everything and be like, wow, okay, you can literally rationally just tear everything apart and go, crap, invalid argument, crap. It's they don't want you to know that. They don't want me to be able to tell you that, okay? Anyway, we're talking about the Jesuits. I have a book. I haven't read it yet, but I'm working on hopefully I'll get a chance to read it. I'm going to have some free time coming up soon in the next couple months. So I'll be recovering from something, so I'll be able to have
You'll be able to read and study.
Yeah, so, well, because I'm not going to be able to do much else, so I'll have some free time. But The Secret History of the Jesuits by Edmund Paris. Now, I haven't read it yet, but this book was recommended to me and by a well-researched individual on the Jesuits, and they said, really good book, you should get it, and I purchased it, have not gotten a chance to read it yet, so I can't give, I can't give out a true, review of the book itself.
Yeah.
But it looks to be along the lines of very interesting, we'll say, at the very least. And as I've said before, the Roman Catholic Church, and we can move on, and I'm not trying to piss anybody off that's Catholic, I'm not attacking you, but the structure of the Roman Catholic Church really isn't the Roman Catholic Church. It's the Roman Empire never fell. It just turned into what we know as the Vatican today. Okay, that's why they have their own country. Everybody's like, how does a church have its own country? I don't understand how does a religion have its own country and their own sovereign country? Because they are the Roman Empire. That is why. In the short form, there's actually a lot. It's more detailed than that, but you know what I mean, Steve. I'll let you
absolutely
throw your thoughts out on that, and then.
Well, we talked about, there are different categories or groups of people. Jacob Frank was kind of a ne'er-do-well back in, I think it was 1787, right around there, 1790, and he was just basically drafted by Weishaupt and his people to put together this Jewish banking cartel. Now we see that Bernanke is stepping down, and Yellen will be a lady by the name of Yellen will be taking his place. She's also Jewish, as many of the top bankers in the Federal Reserve System and the IMF and a lot of these world banks are. So there's always been a cartel of Jewish bankers that operate within this thing. And I have a friend who's a talk show host. I won't name his name, but he is convinced that all of this has to be the Jews because the Jews run all the banks, and he can name them. And I said, yes, you're absolutely right. There is a financial aspect of these people who are running the banking system, but they're a little bit like the clerks at McDonald's. I mean, you can identify them very easily, can't you? They all wear the blue uniform and the white hat, and they all have a name. But the guy that's sitting over in the back there in the Hawaiian shirt with the sunglasses on, drinking coffee, reading the morning paper, he's the franchise owner. You don't even know who he is.
He just looks like some old customer reading the paper, enjoying his morning coffee.
Right, watching everything.
You ever see how the old mafia dons work?
Yeah.
When they catch these guys, and do you see them coming out of their houses? A lot of times, like the ones they caught in Italy, one of the houses I saw they would take one of the guys out of was this old ramshackle house. And I've had a lot of people, you'll see in the comments or wherever, I've had conversations about this with people, and they say, I don't understand why that guy was in a ramshackle house, all that money, and he doesn't have some huge mansion. I would totally have a mansion with gate guards and everything. I said, yeah, and they'd know who you were, because obviously you're somebody important if you have gate guards and a big mansion and high walls and an electrified fence and guns all over the place. That draws attention. That guy, was the head of a mafia crime family, bringing in millions and millions and millions of dollars a year, probably untold assassinations, whatever kind of power he had in that realm, and you had no idea because you thought he was that little old Italian guy down the street that lived in the ramshackle house. Yep. That's how they work. You don't know who the people are. That's why, like, George Soros and all them, they're not at the top of the pyramid. Like, when Glenn Beck blames them, that's a straw man argument. When Beck blames, oh, it's George Soros, he's the top of the New World Order. Glenn, shut up. You know that's not true. You know that's absolutely a lie.
He's too out in the open. I mean, obviously he's been used. I mean, you know, there's a great study really on how the Nazi Party and the Sabbatean Labor Party Jews destroyed all the labor parties in Germany. You know, Hitler was running the Nazi Workers' Party at that time, German Workers' Party, and they systematically destroyed all the trade unions. Trade unions didn't start, you know, with industrial America, friends. They go back a long, long ways, especially in Europe. But they just basically destroyed all these trade unions. And George Soros and people like that, and some of these Labor Party Jews who are still in power today and threatening the world, okay, they were there. And at that time,
Soros pointed out people, like he said, hey, to the Nazis, this guy's a Jew, this guy's a Jew, this guy's a Jew.
Right.
Round him up.
Right.
And yet people look to this guy like he's some sort of superhuman individual. If you, like, what about what he did in the past? Oh, well, you know, what about, no, well, you know nothing. If anybody else did that, he'd be hung as a, you know, they're still going after, like, these Nazi war camp guards. They're all in their, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't at least be tried or whatever for their crimes, even if they're in their 90s. But, I mean, they're going after these guys with a fervor. What about him? He's a scumbag, and he's running around free.
Absolutely. And that's, I mean, if you look at the history of Israel, and I'm not trying to knock all Jews or actually the history of Israel, but you look at the way things came about here. You had Balfour, who was a Freemason, very heavily involved in the elite back in Europe at that time, or the UK and Britain, making deals and decisions to engraft the United States and throw us into the involvement of World War I, which was essentially lost by Britain and France by 1916, right around in there. The Germans had pretty well sewn it all up, and it wasn't until the United States got involved. Now, that was all based on an agreement called the Balfour Declaration, which was to reestablish a homeland and Jewish state, okay? Well, after the war, they had a problem, Popeye. I mean, they had this agreement, of course, to reestablish a state of Israel, but none of the Jews wanted to go there. I mean, they were happy in Europe. You see the connection? Okay, now we got to make it uncomfortable to live in Europe in order to create this state. So the same people...
Don't forget they bombed the King David Hotel, and it was people like Rahm Emanuel's father was, you know, part of the group that did that, and they were proud of it.
Yep.
They just actually, I don't know, a year ago, they gave those guys medals or whatever for their efforts for what they did, because a couple of them are still alive.
Yeah,
you know, they dressed up like Palestinians, bombed the King David Hotel, and it was really, I guess, what would be considered. They were future Israelis, but they were what do they call them? Ergun terrorists or whatever. I think that's the name of the movement there. I can't remember the full name. Either like Ergun or something like that. But that's the group that Rahm Emanuel's father was involved with. And I mean, this is people go, oh my God, how could you say that? You know, are you Jew bashing? No, I mean, I'm just saying the truth. I'm not saying the Jews did it again. They're just the financial. They're like the purse string holders. They're the bankers. Yeah. They're like the financial wing of this idea of a dark new world order. The people that control that. And it's not all the Jewish people. Again, my Jewish grandmother wasn't involved in this. You know what I mean? So I don't think her or any of her little Jewish lady friends were involved in it. People are used. Oh, and by the way, if as another piece of evidence to this, that they're not at the top of the food chain, but there's it's a huge conglomeration. Just like there's not one individual you can blame for 9/11. Same thing. It's a collaboration of a bunch of different agencies working together, right, and different groups working together. If you're to believe what Albert Pike wrote about, he said that World War I was going to be done a certain way, and it was done pretty much to the T. Same thing with World War II. Then what did he say about World War III? Yes. He said they were going to have the Jews and the Arabs wipe each other out.
With help of the communists assisting the Arabs and the capitalists and Western world assisting the Jews. That's exactly what we're seeing.
What's going on today?
Exactly.
So that just goes to show you, look, their World War III is almost like their way of cleaning up their mess, and like they consider even the powers that shouldn't be, the people that are higher up, they consider even their banking wing disposable, because they're going to pit them against the Arabs and wipe all of them out. See, at the end of the day, it's about bringing the population of the planet down to a certain level and then being able to control that level. Because right now, the Earth's population is at such a level that they can't just outright control it like they used to be able to. It's not as easy. They have to go through all this crap and jump through hoops and bribe people, and it gets exhausting. And they don't want to have to do that. It's much easier if you bring the Earth's population down and kill off 3/4 of it, and then you only have the small quarter of the population that there is now, and they can control that through their technological police state with cameras and drones. They want to give drones the ability to fly it around now with AI. I mean, that's what this is all about. It's not about one religion. It's not about whose imaginary friend is better than who. They get people to buy into these different strawman arguments, but as a whole, that's what's going on. And just like with the cops or the military and anybody else, when they're done with whatever specific country or group of people that they need to use to further this agenda, then it just they get tossed by the wayside. And people will inevitably then say, well, who is this group of individuals? Well, none of us know their names, because just like the mafia dons, you don't know them until you fight. They would have. There's obviously certain people in power that probably under interrogation or under arrest and with the right individuals, you'd be able to find this stuff out. But that's why you're blocked from investigating certain people. Why do you think investigations get blocked all the time? Because they don't want this stuff to come out. So until we have people that won't be just attack dogs, and that are willing to actually do the right thing, until people start to step up and do the right thing, it's just this cycle this whole agenda is going to keep moving forward until if they have their way, then I guess we will bring the world down to a more manageable population if we kill each other off, right? If everybody's nuking each other, and that's honestly, I don't think they really want to nuke everything either, because everybody talks about, oh my God, Armageddon. Well, they realize if they do that, they'll poison the earth and the atmosphere and the water and everything for thousands and thousands of years. And I don't care if they have their own little underground systems. It's not going to last that long. So I think that the fear of that specter is more of a useful weapon than actually launching the weapon itself. I mean, maybe in a crap hits the fan situation, you never know, they might do it. But I think the specter of it serves as a more formidable tool to scare the living crap out of people than anything else. But I have no doubt that if left unchecked, they will push this agenda forward until they do kill probably like 3/4 of the population of the planet. Look, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, red, polka dot. If you consider yourself a Jew, a Muslim, a Christian, it doesn't matter if you're gay or straight, man or woman. It does not matter. They hate all of us equally.
Yeah, they do. And, as I was going to say, Popeye, I mean, so many times we have seen some of these Sabbatean Labor Party Jews use the other Jews as fodder. Ben Gurion used to call them cattle. He had no respect at all. You look at his background. This is the guy who was supposed to be the George Washington, the patriarch of modern-day Israel. He hated Jews. He called them simple cattle to be used in whatever capacity they need to. Do they need to kill maybe 400,000 to 500,000 Jews in Israel in this Third World War experiment in order to expand the borders to create a greater Israeli state? If they do, they will do that. They will sacrifice the people. I mean, it's the history of Judaism. That's why I'm saying we're not just bashing Jews for once. We're trying to save their lives from these evil, wicked leaders that are out there.
It's not even. Well, it's not even. Again, I don't even think. Like when people say different, when they talk about different religions and stuff, these people that pretend to be Christians or Muslims or Jews or whatever, they're not really. They're all practicing Satanists. And they are. Yeah, they all take part. I mean, they're worshiping some higher up evil. So they use that mask of religion almost like a costume to get people to listen to them, to get audience with certain people, or to get people to listen to what they have to say with a level of respect. It's not about any religion that any of us believe in. Okay, it's about something much more sinister. None of them. They're all. They're all fake. You have, like I said, it doesn't matter whether they can pretend to be Buddhists, Muslims, Jews, Christians. It doesn't matter. These people. There's certain people that they in positions of power, and they pretend to be these religious individuals, and they're not, because then they go to these events where they actually do partake in worshiping Satan, and they're members of groups or secret societies that do different ceremonies and things. So I don't want to hear, it's the religion again. That's another straw man. People get another way of getting people to fight about something. Well, it's this group or it's that group. No. Look, 3/4 of us are going to, in their mind, in their goal, at least 3/4 of us got to go. Okay, it doesn't matter if you consider yourself, and I say that because that's how you get pigeonholed into something, right? People have to consider themselves to be, well, I'm this, I'm a Christian, or I'm a Jew, or I'm a Muslim. You have to label yourself that, right? And that's via programming, and that's 6 hours of broadcasting in and of itself, right? But people they get everybody, through the centuries and through the methods of control, the powers that shouldn't be, these bloodlines, they get us to pigeonhole ourselves, and then we argue amongst ourselves. It doesn't matter what you consider yourself. You want to label yourself a Muslim or a Christian or a Jew or whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you consider yourself a certain political affiliation. It doesn't matter if you're labeled because you're gay and you're not straight. It doesn't matter. I'm telling you, they hate all of us equally. They use all of us on a different level. They really don't care about any of us. So it's time for us to stop squabbling amongst ourselves, because they get us to fight amongst ourselves so that they can push this deeper agenda. Because nobody looks further into this because they're so entrenched in the infighting. Even well-meaning people, they'll get entrenched in it because they don't realize they're getting sucked into an illogical, irrational debate that has no validity to begin with. If you can realize that, you won't get pulled into the quicksand. And you can dodge. It's like playing Pitfall, and you can jump around the pools of quicksand. The agenda is that there's a certain group of bloodlines that goes back thousands of years, right? And there's even people that we don't know about, right? And that they have this agenda. It's this very small percentage of the population. And for thousands of years, they've always had access to information that the rest of the populace doesn't. And they're the ones responsible for retarding society and humanity and keeping us back from where we would be, who Lord knows where we would be right now. And it's all about control, selfishness. And you could say they're controlled by whatever entities. It doesn't matter. Yes, they worship. They do ceremonies where you could say it's Satanism, but during the ceremonies, they are actually trying to summon. I played one where they were summoning Tiamat, and at the same time they were talking to Enki, which is one of Anunnaki. And I talked to Christopher Everard about this. So look, I know that stuff gets deep, but the point is that they want to get rid of all of us. So it doesn't matter what our personal squabbles between ourselves are. First of all, if we put that aside, we'll realize that most of us actually agree on a lot of stuff. And the squabbles that we have with each other, once you start to look at it rationally, you'll realize that a lot of it was garbage and misinformation that was put out there to keep us all choosing a side, either A or B. And once you do that and you keep people locked in that argument of either A or B, you're going to have that inevitable conflict of the people choosing between A and B. Okay? They don't want you to think outside the box and realize that there's a whole other range of possibilities going all the way down to Z and beyond. They don't want you to look at that. Okay? They don't want you to think about that. They need you. The whole illusion, the whole way they control everybody is through this illusion of either choice A or choice B. I've talked about this a bazillion times. That's the way they frame every argument, and that's how it's. Look, they've studied us they've studied controlling society and humanity for thousands of years. Okay, we haven't had access to this information. There's a reason for that. Anyway, let me get back.
We will.
We got 3 minutes. Last segment coming up. Man, hour and a half went by fast, Steve.
Yeah, it did.
Just flew right by. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. Get a little deep there, Steve.
Yeah, we did. And we were talking during the break, we were talking about Albert Pike's letter, and some people have claimed that it wasn't written by Albert Pike, but there are quotes from it as early as 1890. So whoever wrote this letter, it was prophetic. It has been. There was no Israel. There was no World War I or II.
I talked with Freeman about this when last time I had him on, and I brought this up. Because I had done a broadcast a couple of days before, and I had some new evidence about the letter that I had come across, and I wanted to at least throw it out there. And I said, look, it could have been faked. There's evidence out there, or there's some information out there that says that it was faked. So I wanted to put all the information out there. I said, I think the listeners should go judge for themselves. I'm still, I'm kind of on the fence about it. I still think that it could be real, but I'm not sure. And the more and more I've researched it, the more and more I keep looking at it over the years, if it's not real, for one, like I said to you during the break, if it's not real, why are they following it almost to a T? And two, if it's not real, how did these quotes and stuff come about? And there's references to it, and people will say, no, there's not references to it, but there is. And how are there references to it before World War I? And it just... It was a letter that Albert Pike wrote to Manzini, and you could just, if you Google Albert Pike's letter to Manzini, just look that up. You'll find out. You'll be able to see what we're talking about. And there's this debate out there that whether it's real or not. But I'm in the camp, I guess you could say, that I think it's real. And if it's not real, how do you explain them following it to a T, pretty much, dude? You know what I mean?
It's been prophetic. It's been prophetic regardless of who wrote it. I mean, there are quotes, I believe a Catholic priest made comments about it, quoting from it in the 1890s. So it's been around a long, long time. Regardless of who wrote it, they are following it to a T. And as what we're pointing out, Popeye, they are trying to converge an international war between Islam and communism, or fundamentalist, I would say, Shiite Islam on one side, and Israel and the West, and they're going to try to wear the world out. Read the letter itself. What is it, about a page and a half? It's not that long. It's not that complicated. Now, we know Albert Pike was way out there in terms of where he was in this occult ideology and religion that he had.
So practicing Satanist. So
absolutely, yeah, he was a very evil man. And on our shows we talked about how he was a Confederate general, a crappy one, as you pointed out, Popeye, and a guy guilty of war crimes. And here he is in the White House. In 1866, almost a year after Lincoln is assassinated, with Andrew Johnson. I mean, and then there's statues of him 13 blocks from the White House in this big Masonic hall, and he is like the godfather of Freemasonry, Scottish Rite, morals and dogma, and all that kind of stuff today.
Yeah, why is there a statue of a Confederate Civil War general in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, it's hard to believe. A guy that was a war criminal, really.
But you would think you'd be like, huh? Like, even if you bought the official version of events, you'd be like, huh? That doesn't make sense.
So now we've talked about all three groups, or the major three, and I guess you want to include the Wahhabiist Saudi Arabians and people like that, but we've talked about
the very people that threaten the Russians with terror attacks on the Olympics next year.
Yeah, and the Russians are willing to take that bet because they would like to get rid of Saudi Arabia since they have such a large oil production capability now. They have far more capability to produce oil than Saudi Arabia, and with Saudi Arabia out of the way, of course, they will now control Europe via oil, borrowing a page right out of Henry Kissinger's book, which is, control energy and control oil and energy, you control the economy, control the food, you control everything.
Look, I don't doubt that all of these leaders are controlled, again, by somebody higher up at the food chain who's controlled and linked higher up to the small group of individuals, including Putin, because, Russia was controlled during the Cold War. Both sides were controlled by the same individuals.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Rockefellers brag. David Rockefeller brags in his memoirs how they funded both sides of the Cold War. Gee, I wonder why they would do that. Because they would make money funding both sides of the Cold War. When you lend money out to both sides, they have to pay it back. Gee, where have I seen that before? Where have I seen them make money by selling them goods? World War II, they did the same thing.
Right. And
Vietnam.
Civil War. We talked about what the Rothschilds did during the times of Napoleon, where he funded both sides of the war, running gold right underneath Napoleon's nose to fund both sides of the whole thing. I mean,
that's why history is important, and understanding real history is important. When people are like, well, why do we have to go back? What does it matter? Because if you have no understanding of what's happened in the past, then you'll be gullible, and you'll buy any retarded story about what's going on today from the powers that shouldn't be. If you understand the true history of things and what's really happened in the past, then you'll get when you start to, again, it's like understanding rational debate. You start to look at this stuff and you're like, lie, 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 lie. I can't watch the news. If we're out in public and there's like a newscast on, I'll look up at it, and if they're talking about something, usually they're not talking about anything important, but if they are, I'll be like, lie, lie, liar. My wife's like, shh. Yeah, it's like I just start going off, dude. So I can't even watch that stuff in public. I don't even bother, and I don't watch it. I watch little snippets here on YouTube, here and there, to rip things apart and to give examples of things or to destroy an argument that they put out there. But all of it, anybody that understands anything that we talk about, rational debate, logical thinking, anything, and Steve and I kind of just gave you like a broad overview of this whole dark agenda. There's little side things to it here and there, but basically it's they want 3/4 of all of us dead. So it doesn't matter what our individualities are. We should all praise ourselves and love each other for our individual quirks and things that make us individuals. And we don't have to give up our individuality as they tell you do. None of us have to give up our individuality at all. But we all have to, put our retarded side arguments on the side, and once we do that, we'll realize that most of them are unfounded. And we need to realize that we're all on the same team. We're humanity. We all operate the same way. It doesn't matter what your personal beliefs are or what label you choose to hop into, right? We are all humans. Why don't we all start acting like it? I mean, it's pretty pathetic. I mean, look at how nature is. Look at other living creatures. We're the only living creature, and I know that there's apes attack each other here or there, or have territorial battles or whatever. But I'm talking about we're the only other creature that has this urge to eradicate itself and kill itself off and screw over every other one of us. And it's because that's what we've been programmed from the top down, from the time we're little kids. And the only way we're going to win this is if we take our humanity back. Seriously. That's why I decided to get sidetracked tonight and not hop into Obamacare or anything else, or get into some of the other insanity. I decided to get sidetracked and go deep tonight with Steve, because that's where we went. And it's important for people to get this. They keep us divided so much because it's color or race or color, right? Like we're all made out of friggin' crayons. Race or religion or sexuality or political views. They find some way to keep us all frigging separated. There's a reason for that. Maybe people should look at that. Why is there so much? Why does the mainstream media go out of its way to keep everybody fighting with each other? Why do politicians come out and say things and do things to keep us fighting amongst each other? Why does the president come out and say things to keep us fighting amongst each other? If any of them really cared about us, they would come out and they would tell everybody to calm down and stop fighting. They would talk like I am right now. They would say the things that I'm saying and more. They would tell you that there's hope. They wouldn't come out and try to scare the crap out of you. Okay?
Yeah. That's scare tactics are the icy talon theory. Once you sink that icy talon of fear into the human mind, we become very manipulated. And that's the way they've operated for so many years. I mean, look at the social conditions, Popeye, in a prison, where you put people under pressure. that's when people begin to divide up into racial groups. You got skinheads and blacks and Hispanics and Asians. And I mean, when people are under pressure, they begin to congregate into like-minded or like-identical, like skin, like ethnic or whatever. And that's where you start to see these problems with people and the different groups. And that's the way they keep us divided. They keep us disempowered. And when people are generally, kind of easygoing for the most part, creatures of habit, and when they're pretty comfortable, it's not as hard. Well, it's a lot harder. Let's put it this way: it's a lot harder to try to get them agitated and to do things. You know what I mean? To violate each other or to attack or do things like that. And this is what's happened in Israel, for example. I mean, I think the roadmap to peace has been a roadmap to hell, because what it's basically done is told people that this is your land, that is theirs. We're going to negotiate, bargain over this and that. And 25 to 30 years ago, actually, the whole area was a lot calmer than it is today, because people were kind of settling down after this, the 6-Day War and the occupation, and saying, okay, we got an Arab here who has some property. He's building an apartment complex. We need Jews, or Jews are going to live there. I mean, people started settling down and working with each other.
Does that go right to what Pike wrote to Manzini? Doesn't that just bolster what he said they were going to do?
Right, exactly. Right? They're going to partition us off and create ideological wars and wear us out until they can control us.
Get everybody down, the whole world's population, down to a manageable number. And nothing works as efficient as war. I mean, you could do a virus, but then the possibility of killing off too many people and possibly killing off their own. Even, if they give shots and stuff, the way that stuff mutates, the possibilities, the chances are that it could do that. They do think ahead like this. A lot of people are like, oh, they don't think about that stuff. Oh, they do. Okay? So the most efficient way is warfare, whether it's bombs, lasers, rockets. One of the best ways is to just get us to get pissed at each other and kill each other.
Yeah.
And they do it.
Yeah, a good example of why biological weapons don't work too well was the anthrax situation. They missed both Leahy and, what was the other one? Leahy and, the other senator. And they ended up with a lot of postal workers and office workers and people like that. What was it, 6 dead and about 15 or 20 people very seriously sick. I mean, those kinds of things don't work too well. But when you can control masses through controlled opposition, through propaganda, when you can sink the icy talent of fear in people's minds, and there's still way too many Americans who still believe in the 9/11 crap. We're coming up on 50 years of JFK's assassination, friends. What do you think? I suppose we could get into it, but what do you think about the rally of truckers headed into Washington, D.C.? I mean, the reality.
Well, that just goes to show you that there are people out there that are awake and pissed off. See, they're trying to keep everybody like, oh, you those conspiracy nuts. That's why they refer to people that talk about anything conspiracy related, right? And doing air quotes, because that word's misused, and you and I have talked about that before. They do it because that way they push that image that, if you think outside the box, you're a quote-unquote conspiracy theorist, and you're this remote, 0.0001% of the population. When in reality, you're probably 80 or 90%. It's not that you're a conspiracy theorist. You're a true skeptic. See, there's true skepticism, and then there's faux skeptics. The faux skeptics are the ones that go out there and attack the quote-unquote conspiracy theorists and say, no, the government is right. Look, here's information. And they use things like government official websites or Wikipedia as a way to, be their bolster their argument, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And those people like that, and I've mentioned them before on air, they're what I call faux skeptics, because they take the government's official story and they push it out verbatim as if government, well, they're never wrong and they wouldn't do any wrong. See, that's the way, if you look at it from that fake standpoint, again, that's a straw man. If you look at it from the viewpoint that the government is never wrong, well, then I guess you're going to always attack anybody who has a differing opinion. And there's a lot of skeptics out there like that, or people, like I call them, faux skeptics. Real skeptics are people like us that hear a quote-unquote official story or something the news media says and says, that doesn't sound right. And they go and do research themselves and then find out whatever. Okay, that's true skepticism. That's really so. When people are like, "Oh, I hate skeptics," "Oh, you're a friggin' skeptic," again, it's a way of using the word incorrectly and labeling people with it. The people that are out there doing that are not the ones that push the government official line under the idea of quote unquote skepticism. They're what I call faux skeptics.
Yeah, and that's those kinds of people that just follow the mainstream news media. And friends, I used to work in the mainstream news media. I was a news anchor at a small ABC affiliate. I worked at a very large CBS affiliate in Denver. And, I can tell you that, a lot of people who just listen to this and drink it up end up in a very bad situation when they find out that the solutions and the things that they're hearing in the mainstream news media, be it, cancer treatment, be it financial investments, be it just basically the information that they have out there is so bad, and they end up in a very bad situation and finally realize that they should have been more questioning of the facts that they heard through the mainstream news media and trusting blindly. You wouldn't trust these people to take care of your cat when you're out of town. That's my overall evaluation of the people in the mainstream news media. And I'm glad that I am not there. I'm glad I'm on your show, Popeye. I'm glad I have a freedom to speak. And, American freedom, friends, is not, carrying a flag down the street on the 4th of July and celebrating World War II. American freedom is about holding government responsible. That's what it's been about all along. And that is the real patriotism. That's what we've lost in this country. And that's why we have this tyrant, this dictator, this incredibly artificial guy, a CIA creation with no identity at all, doing all kinds of things that are absolutely out of the law. That's what we're at today, Popeye. We just don't have a true patriotism left in this country of people who question and hold government accountable. That's our job. That's our responsibility. That's what we have to do. It's not marching in the Veterans of Foreign Wars parades. It's not eating apple pie and shooting off fireworks and singing the Star Spangled Banner. I'm getting all tongue-tied, but, the reality is,
No, I know what you mean, dude. It's not,
Yeah, it's holding government. Yeah,
we're not supposed to be sending our kids off to die
yeah.
in banker wars, because that's what this stuff is.
Exactly.
And Smedley Butler talked about it. And people know who's Smedley Butler. Go look him up.
He had a lot to say. War is a racket, and I'm hoping that there's going to be another Smedley Butler step forward at this point, because this thing has gotten so far out of control.
The problem is they train these officers now differently.
Yeah.
And the officers, you get guys that think outside the box like this, they're run out.
Yeah, they are.
They're anybody that has the potential to be a Patton or a Smedley Butler is run out. And the only people that get any of the attention, afterwards as like speaking gigs or anything are these guys that, they love the military-industrial complex and, it gives them a boner to kill people. They're the ones that go out there and, they'll go on Fox News. Yeah, we need to invade another country. Of course we do. It's for our national security. Yeah. Really? I believe you were the guys that Eisenhower warned us about.
Absolutely. He warned us very well about the military-industrial complex. And John F. Kennedy, another excellent man who had a history. I mean, remember the PT-109? I mean, he'd seen the bloody anguishes of war. He'd experienced that. And he surprised a lot of people. I would not have thought. I remember when he ran for president, And I saw the Kennedy-Nixon debates. I'm not old, friends. And I would not have voted for him at that time. But he turned out to be a far better president than we thought. And
well, I mean, he did. A lot of people have said to me, "Oh, you love Kennedy. Like you think he's such a great guy." And I'm like, no, there are things he did I think that were stupid. There were a lot of things I don't agree with. But I think he during his short time in office, he had this massive awakening very fast, and I think a lot of it had to do with some of the people he surrounded himself, like Mary Meyer, and then events that transpired very fast as soon as he was in the presidency, making him realize that you really weren't in charge, and that's why he went after the CIA and did the other things he did. Because he was pissed, and he said, maybe he really did think that his power as president would stand up against these people, and maybe in that aspect he was naive a little bit. And I'm sure maybe if he had a better understanding of how, if you could go back in time and get President Kennedy in a couple months beforehand and bring him to the future and show him what's become, since. I'm sure he'd have a better understanding. But, he was assassinated. He had his brains blown out. And also at the time, you have to remember the level of thinking of humanity 50 years ago, too. Okay?
Yeah, it was a lot different, of course.
But very different. But, I'm not defending him by any means. I think, just from my research, I think he had an awakening. But he did come from the Kennedy family's not clean, we'll say. But he wasn't who initially was supposed to be president anyway. His brother was supposed to be president, but his brother was killed during World War II, so then they put him in there. And he was a very different person than his father and his older brother, and I think his own individuality shined through, and then personal experiences, he decided to do the right thing, and it cost him his life. And you can hate on him for a lot of stuff, but at least he's tried to stand up and make a difference as a president. Since then, nobody has. And when people talk about, well, he went to the UN and he spoke to the UN and blah, 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 again, he wouldn't have had the understanding of what the UN was maybe really set up. Maybe he did, but he probably wouldn't have had a full understanding of what the UN was and everything else and all the stuff since then, because this was 50 years ago. Again, if you could take him back into the future and show him, from then till now, I'm sure he might, oh, holy crap, you know what I mean? He's not around to see any of that stuff. And I think that perhaps he really did believe that the UN was, a hope for a better future where we could all get along. Because, it would be cool if we could all get along as humanity, right? That is the end game. Like, I don't have a problem if we all get along and we could all just not kill each other, because then we could take our spare time. Because people would go, well, if we weren't killing each other, Popeye, what would we be doing? Well, how about if we were exploring, like, new forms of energy? All the money and effort we put into building bombs and rockets, we could find new methods of energy that are cleaner and don't screw the planet up, right, for future generations. Or how about exploring the oceans? Oh, that would be kind of cool, because we have explored like only 3 or 4% of the ocean. Okay, the number is very, very small. We know nothing. We have topographical maps from satellites. Ooh, big whoop-de frickin' do. Okay. We have not explored the oceans properly. They find new life forms every day down there. Yeah, but we know everything there is to know. 200 years ago, we didn't know what electricity was. We were using fire to see, and suddenly we know everything there is to know. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a very arrogant standpoint, and that viewpoint is pushed because of that. It's that base consciousness level, and that's pushed to keep us, from evolving. And if we're constantly fighting and looking at things in that level and in that playing field, then we're never going to get out of there, and we'll stay in this perpetual, soup of crap, and we'll always be controlled. But if we realize what we're doing and step out of that, then that method of control instantly dissolves. And that's why they need to scare you, and that's why they need to put on Darth Vader outfits and dress up like stormtroopers and scare the living crap out of people and say, no, if you don't do what I tell you, I'm going to arrest you and SWAT team you. And that's why they do the things they do. And in order to get the cops to do it, they amp them up on fear and get them, afraid of the general public. Everybody's a terrorist. Everybody's against you. They hate cops because we're good and they're bad. We're at a war with scum in society. But that's the kind of crap that they feed them. Okay? And then they get people arguing amongst back and forth with each other. And that's another way that they keep people separated, because they don't want people to realize, they want people to have a choice, either acquiesce or get beaten up. And, and if you try to have an armed revolution, we have FEMA camps and martial law and all that for you. That's your two choices with this tyranny that they offer you. But there's more choices than that. There's another choice. How about you don't participate in the game at all? How about you just say, F you, you're irrelevant, and so is your police state and your methods of control. I don't need you, eat it. And then they go, what? Well, you're only one individual, arrest him. And then everybody else says the same thing and says, yeah, your methods of control, irrelevant, so are you, beat it, kick rocks. And they go, well, but you need my money. No, we don't, your money sucks. We'll invent something to work amongst ourselves. And that's fair, F you. But you need our protection. No, we'll form our own method of protection. You need us to govern. No, we're good. We'll we'll formulate it. First of all, the term government literally means mind control. It's Latin.
Yeah,
okay,
that's right.
It's two Latin words, a verb and a noun. Okay, it means mind control. Go look this up. You'll see it yourself. And I don't need a government. We can have some sort of structure to keep things running properly. We don't need you. We don't need them. Okay, understand that, ladies and gentlemen. That's the simple truth. Everybody goes, oh my God, what's the solution? What do we do? What do we do? That's why I say the solutions to our problems are an inside job. We do not need them. Period. End of story. All of the minutia and everything else is important to understand, but to understand as a solution, just understand that if you make them irrelevant, and if everybody does that, then the charade stops. The only reason they have power is because we acquiesce and we give them power. Just like, what was the moral of the story with the Freddy Krueger movies? Anybody remember Nightmare on Elm Street? Really quick. What was the moral of the story? In the last minute we have, what was the moral of the story? The moral of the story was, if you didn't fear Freddy and knew he was a nightmare only in your dreams, and you weren't afraid of him, you could fight him, right? Everybody would die all these horrible, gruesome deaths from Freddy Krueger, the guy with the glove. But then the people that could fight him weren't afraid of him, and they actually had power to fight back. And he was actually defeated multiple times that way because people didn't fear him. Do you understand, ladies and gentlemen? Do not give in to the boogeyman, the Freddy Krueger, the powers that shouldn't be, with their glove with knives on it. We're gonna come get you. You must give in. I'm going to kill you. Only if you believe in them and will you give them power. So just don't believe in them. Steve, we're out of time. Thanks for coming on again, brother.
My pleasure, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, love you all. Catch you all again tomorrow night. Remember, look to yourself for the solutions, and we'll make them irrelevant. We're out of here.